partners in crime, and the other entitled Uprisings in the Market. You list three countries that have a close relationship with Nicaragua, one being Cuba, which you describe as Communist Cuba's influence is unmistakable. You talk about Russia providing the regime with weapons and expertise, and then you also talk a little bit about China and the Grand Interoceanic Canal. Could you please expand on the role those three governments are playing in the Nicaraguan government at this time?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. In the case of Venezuela, $5 billion, and Venezuela has been involved directly in the process of supporting the corruption in Nicaragua. Part of the payments to the public sector has been paid with money from Venezuela, Albanesa, and the U.S. has been sanctioned Albanesa for corruption, money laundering, and the involvement in drug trafficking in Nicaragua. With China has been supporting, and China, well, it was a Chinese planning with Daniel Ortega, major corruption with the Interoceanic Canal, and there are some information about Russia operating in Nicaragua. They have a building in Nicaragua, and the people in Nicaragua say that more than 200 Russians operate in Nicaragua, and there are some concerns about the weapons distributed by the Russians in Nicaragua. Russia has been providing for military armor, military weapons for the last 5 to 6 years to Nicaragua. Some of the people that I talk that have been in prison have been telling me that some of the people that are in all the prisoners claim that they hear Cuban voices when they have been tortured in prison. And it makes sense because it's the same model of torture. If you see the torture in Venezuela, it's rape, it's sexual abuse, and different kind of torture. That is the same model implemented in Venezuela and in Nicaragua. The level of response of the management of the forces, they have been repressing the civilians at the streets. It is a military training, and some of the people have been saying that the Russian and the Cuban and the Venezuelan has been trained in military, the paramilitary, the groups supported that support Daniel Ortega directly with weapons. The weapons, when they began the repression, came to Nicaragua in a matter of days. Several planes, some people in Nicaragua claim the Cuban planes and Venezuela planes arrived to Nicaragua with weapons to reinforce the pro-government violent groups in Nicaragua.
And just very briefly, also about the Chinese investment in Nicaragua. We've got, and we've seen in the past and had hearings on the Belt to Road Initiative where China is investing in the developing countries, and we're seeing that in Venezuela, are we not? Or excuse me, in Nicaragua, are we not?
In Nicaragua, China is not so active, apart from the canal, because Taiwan has been supporting more the government of Nicaragua. Taiwan has been a major provider of support of Nicaragua. The Chinese has been acting in Nicaragua, but not as active as in Venezuela.
And then finally, you talked about if Ortega is allowed to run, he will be reelected, and you talk about the need for additional sanctions. Do you believe if additional sanctions are imposed that we will see someone else step forward and run for president if in fact those sanctions were in fact imposed by our government?
The problem with the sanctions right now is we only impose sanctions to the inner circle of Daniel Ortega. Daniel Ortega's wife, Daniel Ortega's kids, and the people that work with Daniel Ortega. We're not expanding the sanctions to members of the police that were part of the repression, members of the military who were part for inaction or direct action against the civilians in Nicaragua. And we see that how the regime has been reacting to the sanctions. They are desperate every time that the U.S. impose any sanctions. They asking for lifting the sanctions in the negotiation with the alliance. That's one of the first topics in the negotiation, lifting the sanctions. Yes, I do believe that more sanctions in Nicaragua will be effective. Listen, we are not asking any of the witness Nobody's asking for intervention. Nobody's asking for anything. We are asking for sanctions and economic support and technical support to the opposition to be more effective in terms of getting rid of this regime, this terrible regime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Congressman Espaillat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Maradiaga, you told us that there are nation states in the